All right, so as you see from the talk, it talks about how fight fans sometimes talk about fighters ducking one another, and sometimes the truth is not that, but they talk about it. And I'll tell you why. There are a number of different reasons. One of the things that really annoys me in boxing is when somebody tries to promote a fight, but it doesn't happen next. In UFC, um, guys promote fights, and they say, "I want to fight you," and then they fight the person. The build up is there, and it builds up, and it's on, right? And boxing is not quite the same way, and that's one of the things that really annoys fans. Mayweather Pacquiao is a perfect example of this. So Mayweather came back in boxing in 2009 and fought Juan Manuel Marquez to face Pacquiao. Nobody realized that he was facing Juan Manuel Marquez for the reason that he wanted to face Pacquiao. All right. But people couldn't see that because the narrative was Marcus is too small. Why are you fighting this lightweight? Blah, 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 blah. All right. On top of that, um, Floyd had his own promotional company. So behind the scenes, of course, there was all this conflict and other promoters were trying to down a certain promoter. It's what it is. It's duck season low, right? So what happens is, especially when fighters present to the public, this is the guy I want to face. The public be salivating. I'll give you a perfect example of that. Um, in recent times, uh, we were hearing about. Um, I'm trying to remember the fight now. It just kind of drew a blank, but I remember hearing about this fight, and I was like, "Yeah!" I was real amped for it. I'm trying to remember which division and who it was that I wanted to see face, and they actually mentioned the person and everything. Oh, Tyson Fury. He talked about facing Jarrell Miller, and I was like, "Yeah, that's a good ass fight." And then it became Charles Martin, who was like, well, "Yeah, it's all right." Then it became Schwartz. He faced Schwartz in the end, and I was like, "God damn!" It's one thing when you get your hopes up. A Jarrell Miller versus Tyson Fury would be a great fight. Let me tell you why. Jarrell Miller can get to the inside of a fighter. He can take punches to go to the inside. Tyson Fury's an outboxer. I wanted to see if Jarrell Miller could succeed again to the inside. What would Tyson Fury do once Jarrell Miller got to the inside? We saw it without a Wallen a little bit, but of course Jarrell Miller can do it a lot better. So that fight really hyped me up like a fan. And then, you're let down when bit by bit the information gets worse and worse. The opponent is not as good, right? That's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Deontay Wilder, um, you know, facing Tyson Fury in February. The deal is signed. Tyson Fury goes and busts up his eye, right? Now it's in jeopardy. We don't know if he's going to face Tyson Fury. We weren't really interested. I don't think a lot of fight fans were interested in seeing a rematch with Luis Ortiz, mainly because Deontay Wilder already knocked him out. And if he could knock him out once, he probably could knock him out again. So that's not a fight that makes everybody salivate. But just thinking about a rematch with Tyson Fury, seeing how the first fight went and how controversial it was, people were wondering, man, what would happen Wilder faced Tyson Fury again? Then Tyson Fury goes, not only gets his eye cut, but he's getting beaten to the body by Otto Wallen. And now Tyson Fury looks much more beatable. And so all of the shine and fuzz and excitement starts to dissipate as we realize Tyson Fury may not outbox Wilder. Wilder might actually stop him if he goes to the body. So these kinds of things make fight fans, I think, talk about fighters ducking fighters. They get sour, they get disappointed, they get disenfranchised because the fighters bring it up. The fighters say, "I'm going to face this guy next," and then they don't. And then so fighters now, the fight fans, they're all like flustered and angry and frustrated. And in their frustration, they'll go with any narrative. And usually it's the promoter that puts it out there. Oh yeah, the guy's ducking this guy. So they just start putting their vengeance into it. Yeah, you fucking ducking, you ducking, you ducking. Like how I want to say Canelo's ducking Demetrius Andrade, but I can't say it because I'm frustrated that he didn't face Demetrius Andrade to get the full unification of all the titles. It was a little frustrating for me. And it seems like the most logical thing. The only difference is Canelo didn't say that he was going to face Demetrius Andrade, but what he did say was he was going to get all the titles this year. That's not happening. And when the boxers say certain things and you hang on their every word and it doesn't happen, or promoters say certain things and really got you salivating and your appetite there, and you're like, yes, and then it doesn't happen, it really, 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 really annoys fans. So unlike UFC, where you can get the fights you really want to see at the time you want to see them, it's not really so in boxing. It's not that fighters are ducking fighters. Take, for instance, Bob Arum planted in everyone's mind that this Errol Spence versus Terrence Crawford fight is the fight at welterweight, right? He planted that in everyone's minds. Terrence Crawford didn't say he didn't plant it. Errol Spence didn't plant it. Bob Arum did it, right? And the thing about it is, there are all these other great welterweights in there, and everybody overlooked them and just focused on Terrence Crawford and and Errol Spence, just because Bob Arum said that. And so the fans now were expecting that fight to happen next, for unrealistic reasons, but nonetheless, that's what they were expecting, like in UFC. So I can understand why they got disenfranchised when it didn't happen next, and it didn't happen next, and it didn't happen next, and it didn't happen next. Because fight by fight, Errol Spence kept on fighting guys which were not Terrence Crawford, and Terrence Crawford kept on fighting guys that was not Errol Spence. But Bob Arum had couched the narrative in such a way to make it sound like Errol Spence was ducking Terrence Crawford. And because fans are so frustrated with boxing that they're not getting the fights that were presented to them, somebody mentioned this fight and they were like, yeah, I would like to see that, because they're thinking of Terrence Crawford and how good he is. And then he got this pound for pound status and pound for pound rankings. And you think about Errol Spence, they're not seeing it as a promoter trying to build a fight. They're seeing it as, God damn, it needs to happen now. And so what happens is, if somebody whispers in their ear, that guy's ducking that guy, then all of a sudden the fans start to go at it. And then you got the Errol Spence fans, you got the Terrence Crawford fans, and they're like, yes, you're ducking him, and you're ducking him, and you're ducking him. And that's how this ducking thing happens. Now, there are times when fighters actually do duck other fighters. But usually, because no one's whispering in anyone's ear anything, everyone gives it a pass. Take, for instance, at the featherweight division, Shakur Stevenson was supposed to face, I forgot what the kid's name is, not Virgil Ortiz, the other guy. Oh my God, I forgot his name. Oscar Valdez. Now, Oscar Valdez moved up in weight and did not face Shakur Stevenson. Shakur's not going to be facing somebody else for the mandatory. Nobody's saying, oh my God, Oscar Valdez duck Shakur Stevenson. Nobody's saying that. Because one, it's not in everybody's attention. And two, nobody was anticipating that fight. So a lot of times when people talk about ducking, it's either because this fight is very high profiled, and therefore people anticipate this big matchup and it doesn't happen. People say that, for instance, the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight happened 5 years too late. What they really mean by that is that Maypac got our anticipation or juices ready for this fight in 2010, and it never happened. And so there was disappointment that's, came off of it both in both camps, and mostly in Mayweather's camp. There was a disappointment that the fight didn't happen, and that snowballed into he's ducking him and he's ducking him, which is what the whole career of Floyd Mayweather became. People started talking about him ducking a whole set of people because of the Pacquiao fight. So the interesting thing about this is that when they actually did fight, Pacquiao was in a better position than back in 2010. I'll explain to you what I mean. Pacquiao earned much more money since 2010. Pacquiao was able to, even though he was pound for pound number one in the world in 2010, Floyd was pound for pound number two, Pacquiao was able to improve his boxing game because of certain things that happened to him. So he was a much more crafty boxer, much more safer boxer. And even though he got knocked out, and he lost a fight, some people say controversial, it was able to make him a better fighter. So when he did actually face Floyd Mayweather would knock his ass out or emphatically beat him. And even though Floyd schooled him, he didn't emphatically beat him, like, give him an ass whooping, which the younger Floyd would probably have done. So I'm just saying that when you look at it in retrospect, it actually worked out fine the way it was. But the problem with it was that the boxers and the fighters made us all believe in 2010 that this fight was going to happen. When everyone heard that Mayweather was going to face Pacquiao, everybody was in a euphoric state. It was like, Pacquiao's this tornado. He's like this Tasmanian devil. And now we're going to see this defensive genius and this pot shatter fight the defensive, offensive, incredibly aggressive offensive fighter. So the people were really salivating about it in 2010. And then you hear fight fans make excuses like, Pacquiao decayed, and that was, I mean, Pacquiao's age, so that they will decay a little bit, but they get smarter too. So the fight's a little bit different to what you would have seen in 2010, but it is what it is. Now, smash that like button, people. What I'm saying is, I can't really fault the fans for feeling disappointed, because I have on several occasions felt disappointed about certain things in boxing. But it's not that boxers are ducking one another. It's just that the fights will happen a little later. Take, for instance, Errol Spence accused Sean Porter of ducking him. We saw what happened when Sean Porter actually faced Errol Spence. If Errol Spence had faced Sean Porter earlier on in his career, Porter would have beaten him. It would have beaten him. Errol Spence was now ready for a Sean Porter. Get what I'm saying? So, at the end of the day, a lot of people talk about all kinds of things with boxers. And I think in boxing, sometimes we need to be vocal about certain fights. Like Demetrius Andrade not getting a fight, even though he's put himself in a position, but yet he needs to get a marquee name under his belt. And probably that will change things a bit. But with respect to these boxers, one, it doesn't, as fight fans, I would advise you guys not to just focus on one fight. Look at all the people in the division. And even though you see the appetizing fight there, look to see if there are other guys in that division worthy of being faced. And think about that as well. Open your mind to other possibilities, in other words. Even a higher weight class, the guy going up a higher weight class to get challenged. Fine. The other thing I want to say is, this is not the UFC. Boxing is not UFC. Sometimes you get the fights you want when you want them. Sometimes you don't. Once the fight is the greater the magnitude of the fight is usually the longer it will take to make. All right. When you look at, for instance, if Manny Pacquiao is to face Errol Spence, it probably would take a little longer than usual for that to happen. Mainly because not only Pacquiao's age, but Pacquiao's this big superstar. So Pacquiao facing Errol Spence, I think might happen maybe at the end of 2020. All right. Errol Spence versus Terrence Crawford might happen in the middle of 2020. Errol Spence versus Danny Garcia is going to happen in the beginning of 2020. So I think Errol Spence fights 3 times next year. I think he does face Terrence Crawford before Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao will be like the final great finale. But I think that Terrence Crawford will take, I think Errol Spence will take on Terrence Crawford in 2020. So what I'm saying is that fight will happen, but it's not a fight that's going to be the first thing to happen. And then you always think of the logistics. Why would a fighter who has all these world champions in a particular league, which would be the PBC, Premier Boxing Champions, why would he overlook those guys to face Terrence Crawford first when he's got these guys in this league? I don't understand. Like, people are saying, well, once a guy challenges you, you should just go to him. He's king of the mountain. So no, that's dumb. Terrence Crawford wouldn't do that. Terrence Crawford's facing Galvalios because he's not even facing Sergey Lipinets or anything. He's not a pay-per-view star. We all see his pay-per-view numbers. What does Errol Spence have to gain by beating Terrence Crawford, taking the WBO belt, and coming back across the PBC? When it's going to be so difficult to make, you're going to have 2 networks that have to agree on things. You have to share money. It's going to make a loss, financially speaking. So it just doesn't make no sense. And I don't care what era of boxing you'd be in. That doesn't make any money sense at all, right? So that's not a fight to be made immediately. Danny Garcia fights a good fight because, again, it's a PBC. Danny Garcia is well known. He has a great long history. You could say his resume is comparable to Errol Spence's resume, if not better, especially at welterweight. But overall in his career, he's had better opposition. Errol Spence had the following people, marquee names: Ricky Burns, Yuriorkis Gamboa, Amir Khan. These marquee names. That's it. He ain't got nobody else. Right? Victor Postol is not a marquee name. He's a one-time world champion. Right? Omotoso, he was a unified champion. It was great for him. But again, he's not a marquee name. Right? And all the other guys are good fighters, but they're not marquee names. He has 3 marquee names. Errol Spence has better marquee names than him. Errol Spence fought the #1 welterweight in the world, Kell Brook. He fought the number. He fought Sean Porter, another marquee name, and he also fought Danny Garcia. Three marquee names that are much better than anything that Errol Spence has. And Danny Garcia faced better names than Errol Spence as well. Correct, Intangible Boxing. Tommy Temper, shout out to you. Yeah. Think about this. Danny Garcia faced Eric Morales. Amir Khan, when Amir Khan was actually something. He faced Lamont Peterson at 140. We're talking about at 140. He's a marquee name at 140 for sure. Not at welterweight. He also faced Lucas Matisse when Lucas Matisse was something. He also faced who else did he face? Anyway, then he went up and he faced at welterweight Keith Thurman, and he also went up and faced Sean Porter. So he obviously has faced much better competition than Bud Crawford has faced. Period. It's just what it is. You know, and Danny Garcia did it at higher weight classes, higher weight class. Bud, it's a good fighter. I mean, you could include Ray Beltran, who became a former world champion. You're not a marquee name, but I'm just saying. You look at Danny Garcia's resume; it's crazy. Okay, and Danny Garcia hang with these big boys. You know, so I'm just saying. Intangible Boxing says, like I'm supposed to be impressed by Danny beating Paulie Morales and Zab. I'm talking marquee names, though. Zab Judah. I'm talking about marquee names. He's got bigger marquee names on his resume. Right? Terrence Crawford doesn't have those kinds of marquee names. He just doesn't. He's got Amir Khan. He's got Ricky Burns, which is borderline marquee. And he got Yurkus Gamboa, who's, again, borderline marquee. Gamboa was a featherweight champion, super featherweight champion. He ain't nothing at lightweight. Right? Amir Khan was something at super lightweight. Zab Judah was a world champion when Danny Garcia faced him, right? Or was it Amir Khan? I'm trying to remember. Maybe he wasn't a world champion. No, he wasn't a world champion. Sorry, my bad. Right? But he had Zab Judah on his resume. Zab Judah, whether you like it or not. Eric Morales just beat some guy, I can't remember who it was, to become super lightweight champion, right? Eric Morales doing the 4th world title. This is just what it is. I mean, he also faced, like I said, for Amir Khan, then he faced Keith Thurman, then he faced Sean Porter. You can't take away from Sean Porter. You see what Sean Porter was. You can't take away from Keith Thurman. You saw what Keith Thurman was. You can't take away from Lucas Matisse. You saw what Lucas Matisse was. You can't take away from, well, Paulie Malignaggi wasn't a world champion, so that one's out. Sean Porter did it, man. But you can't take away from these guys. You just can't. You know what I'm saying? He also faced Robert Guerrero. Don't forget that, when Robert Guerrero was still something. And Robert Guerrero gave him the work in the final rounds, right? Lamont Peterson also gave him the work in the final rounds. I'm going to say this to you guys. When Errol faces Danny Garcia, he's going to give him the work in the final rounds. That's just what it is. Danny Garcia, they catch up to Danny Garcia, they figure him out, and then they give him the work. The only guy that didn't give him the work in the final rounds was Keith Thurman. Right? Lamont Peterson did him in. Mauricio Herrera did him in. Lamont Peterson did him in. Did I say Lamont Peterson? I said it twice. Right? He gets to work in the final rounds. He gets worked in the final rounds. So that's why I think Errol Spence is going to work him in the final rounds, really beat him up bad in the final rounds. That's just what I think. But anyway, back to what we were saying. Yeah, Danny, I think, has a better marquee names than Terrence Crawford. It's just what it is. Okay? And Zab Judah got his championship off a club fighter. It don't matter, man. It don't matter. Right? And the guy wasn't a club fighter, as far as I do remember. He's an African dude. Hold on a second. I got to come back. Let me just step out for a minute. All right. All right, cool. So. Hmm. Like it? What's up, food? Yes, sir. Okay. I come back, please. No problem. I'll go and pick up the back of the arms. Like back of the house? Yeah, back of the shop. Alright, cool. Me? No, I right now I'm streaming. Yeah. I'm streaming right now on the car. Yeah, man. Yeah, so back to what I was saying. So yeah, so at the end of the day, I think that Danny Garcia, I think, faced much more marquee names than say a Terrence Crawford. Did he face better opposition, Terrence Crawford? I think so too. I think so too. I think he had it hard coming up. Terrence Crawford too. Don't get me wrong. He faced what did he take it from Ricky Burns in Scotland, which was amazing. But at the end of the day, I think that I think that um, that I think Danny got the better competition. I would love to see. Let me tell you, the thing that would get me really excited is seeing Terrence Crawford versus Danny Garcia. I think that's a good fight. I think he's over his head with the other guys, Sean Porter and Keith Thurman, Errol Spence. I think he's over his head with those fights. But if he has fights with like Danny, I think Danny's a guy he should face. Danny, maybe a Kell Brook because Kell Brook has been out of boxing for a while in terms of welterweight. I think he should have a good fight with guys like guys his size, for now. If you look at great fighters like Henry Armstrong and even Sugar Ray Robinson. Sugar Ray Robinson was fighting the same guys coming up from welterweight to middleweight. He fought the same guys. It was guys around his size. So even if you look at Henry Armstrong was fighting guys around his size. Even though it was called a welterweight competition, those guys came up from lightweight. And they were fighting at super lightweight or welterweight. You know what I'm saying? They were small guys. So, like, for instance, Floyd fought Cotto, but Cotto came up from super lightweight. Floyd came up from super featherweight. Floyd knew Cotto and was actually at the super lightweight division when Cotto was there. So you want to face guys that like coming up in weight. That's why Canelo didn't have a problem facing Miguel Cotto because Miguel Cotto was a super welterweight and Canelo was a super welterweight, even though they're fighting for a middleweight title. And this stuff kind of happens, with Seferino Garcia versus Henry Armstrong. Seferino was actually a welterweight. And when they fought for the middleweight title, Seferino was like 150, which was 150. He was like a super welterweight. He was like 152, 153. And I think Henry Armstrong was like 140 something, 141, something like that, right? Small guys. So to me, Terrence Crawford should be facing those kinds of guys. He shouldn't be facing a bona fide welterweight just like in his next fucking fight. That just don't make no damn sense. Size is important. You look at Floyd Mayweather even. How many bona fide, full-fledged welterweights he faced? Andre Berto is one. Pacquiao's not one. Maidana's not one. Canelo came up from super lightweight and he became a welterweight and then became a super welterweight. All right. Cotto came up from super lightweight. Let's see. You have to think about those things because this stuff people don't talk about. Oscar De La Hoya wasn't a full-fledged welterweight. He came up from super feather like Floyd. So Floyd faced him. Mosley came up from lightweight. Marquez came up from lightweight. People don't really pay attention to those things, but there are very important points to the strength of the fighter and stuff like that. Did Andre Berto beat Louis Collazo? You could argue Collazo won that. You could argue that. Yeah, you could argue that. You could argue Collazo beat Ricky Hatton. You could argue that too. Ricky Hatton again was not. He was a super lightweight, like Cotto. You look at who else did Floyd face? He didn't really fight much. Bunny fight welterweights when you look at his career. Zab Judah was a super lightweight that went up to welterweight. Um, Carlos Baldomir, I think, was a true welterweight. Yeah, he was a true welterweight. So Carlos Baldomir was a true welterweight. What else we got? Guerrero was a super bantamweight. He came all the way up from super bantamweight. Um, what else we had? Victor Ortiz was a super lightweight that became a welterweight. I think his first welterweight fight was against Andre Berto. You see, so you have to really pay attention to those things because size and strength is important to bear in mind. All right? Oscar de la Hoya fought a full-fledged welterweight in Felix Trinidad. Tito. Tito was a real welterweight. Vernon Forrest was a real welterweight. Yeah. That's why Shane Mosley, he had some problems against Vernon Forrest because Vernon Forrest was a real welterweight. So that's what Keith Thurman was talking about. Real welterweights. Who was Floyd fought as a real welterweight? Berto was one. Baldomir was one. Who else? I think that's about it. In his entire resume, he only had a few real welterweights he faced. That's why I wanted to see him face Kell Brook. Because Kell Brook was a real welterweight. Even Canelo started off at super lightweight, like Miguel Cotto. See, people don't know this stuff. That you got to pay attention to that. That tells you a little bit about frame and size and frame. Got to do your homework. Now, there wasn't a lot of real welterweights when Floyd was around. They were a little bit smaller. He was supposed to face Corey Spinks. I think Corey Spinks was a real welterweight. I have to go and look. I think he was a real welterweight. So he was supposed to face him. But, yeah, Floyd didn't really face a lot of real welterweights. Sean Bay Mitchell was a super featherweight, I think it was. Either featherweight or super featherweight. Came up from there. So, Intangible Boxing says, let's be fair, though. Canelo started fighting at 15. This is true, but he still started off at super lightweight. That's the point. It's where you start your professional career. It doesn't matter what age you are. You know what I'm saying? So he started off at super lightweight, right? Now, Miguel Cotto stayed at super lightweight a lot longer than Canelo. Canelo, a couple fights, I think it was like 4 or 5 or 6 fights he fought at super lightweight, right? But my point is, I think he fought Miguel Vasquez actually at super lightweight. But my point anyway is this, that Canelo started off at super lightweight. So everybody says, yeah, I mean, Sugar Ray Leonard started off at super lightweight as well in his pro career. That's correct. Somebody said that you said Berto would beat Sugar Ray Leonard. I don't know if I said that. I don't know. I can't remember. I have to go back and look. And why would I say something like that though? Why would Berto beat Sugar Ray Leonard? What's the reasoning behind it? Like I would have to hear the reasoning for that. I don't understand how would Berto beat Sugar Ray Leonard though? I can't see that. How? Because what Berto does what? Bang? I don't understand. Did I say that? Why would I say something like that? Like, I'd have to understand the context in which I'm talking about because there had to be some context behind that. How would Berto beat Sugar Ray Leonard? Because his jab? What? I'm trying to understand. Did I say that? I don't know. I can't remember what I say. There's a lot of things I say. Berto beat Sugar Ray Leonard. When did I say that? What video? Can somebody pull up the video so I can see? Intangible Boxer says, how do you think a Luis Colado Floyd Mayweather 140 fight would go? You're asking hypotheticals again? Collazo? Let me think about Collazo. 140 though. Not 147? 147 you mean? Collazo didn't fight at 140. Fought at 147. Collazo was a 147 pounder too. Career. 147 pounder. Yeah, but anyway, back to what I was saying. There was guys like Paul Williams, who was a career 147 pounder. Tony Margarita was a 147 pounder, career 147 pounder. So that's why people talk about those fights. They wanted to see what Floyd would do against those guys. Anyway, my point is, fight fans, they get discouraged because uh, the fights they want to see, they don't get to see them. So they get discouraged. That's basically it, really. When they want to see them. And usually they're brought up by the promoters or by, like, for instance, Jarrell Miller versus Anthony Joshua. Everybody's hype about it. Then Miller pops dirty. And that throws off everything. Now we don't get to see that fight. Thankfully, Matchroom, one thing about Matchroom I get it, they make great fights now. Great matchups. So when the Ruiz fight versus Anthony Joshua came about, everybody realized Ruiz was going to be a tough fight. But I thought that Anthony Joshua would pull it off and beat Andy Ruiz. To my surprise, Andy Ruiz stops Anthony Joshua. Stops him. Which is incredible. But this is the kind of stuff that we have to deal with that I think fans of boxing they get hyped about something and then they just pull the rug under you and say, it's not going to happen. This is not going to happen here. This is not going to happen here. And everybody gets deflated and everybody gets mad. Everybody gets angry. They're like, man, what the hell? You hyped me up for this fight and then it doesn't happen. And we've seen it several times. We saw a nice matchup with Povetkin versus Wilder, and then Povetkin turns out to be dirty. The fight doesn't happen. Right? All this hype up and then the fight doesn't happen. You see Dillian White get in position to become a mandatory for Wilder. I mean, which you prefer? Wilder versus Ortiz 2? Or if everything went smoothly, Wilder versus Dillian White after Dominic Brazil. I'd prefer to see that. Kind of Wilder Ortiz 2. Why are we running back something that ended in a KO? It wasn't even a close fight. It's a call it unnecessary rematch. Wilder versus Stavern. Unnecessary rematch. Fury versus Wilder was controversial. That's a necessary rematch. So that's what I'm talking about. Old school boxers sometimes rematch guys. Why are you rematching them? For what? You rematch guys who had close fights with you. You don't need to rematch guys that you dominated and you knocked out. Unless the fight was close until you knocked out the opponent. That's the thing I'm trying to explain to people. Well, it's boxing. Fight fans have to take sometimes what they get. And this is what makes fight fans sometimes discouraged. It started as Wilder versus Joshua rivalry, and Joshua gets knocked out. It takes some of the excitement and steam out of boxing. We had the Wilder section of fans talking about Joshua's ducking Wilder. Huh. We had the Joshua section of fans saying that Wilder was ducking Joshua. Huh. Good stuff. It all falls apart when Joshua loses. And possibly will lose again to Andy Ruiz. Rumors that Ward might face Canelo if he beats Kovalev, says Tommy Tempera. Yeah, I talked about that in the other video. I don't think that's a good look for Canelo. He'll lose. Ward will take 1 or 2 tune-ups and beat his ass. For 30, 40 mil, yeah. WW Raw 2013 XS says, it doesn't matter once your body gets adjusted to the weight. True, but that takes some time to happen. And physical strength is important in boxing. Not just skills. You need physical strength to block punches. Otherwise, if the guy's stronger than you, he'll punch through you. You had to have physical strength on the inside. Otherwise, the guy could bear down his weight on you, tie you out, wrestle you on the inside, rough you up on the inside, move you around. There are different ways to tire out a fighter. Not just punches. Wilder versus White would have been a good fight. White deserved it. WBC's dragging their foot on this White issue. They should find out the details and either ban White or clear him, but they should move faster. Jarrell Miller is allowed to box. And then we got this kid, Billy Joe Saunders, is allowed to box. WBC is not supposed to drag their foot like that. XXX Raw 2013 says, I was 145 pounds my whole life. At age 26, I got up to 215 pounds, which I now have been at for years. So my strength now is totally different. Okay. That's a lot of weight, though, to put on. Is that muscle mass or is that just fat? That's a lot of weight. From 145 to 215. How tall are you? I'm just saying that you have to build up your strength when you enter a new weight class. You don't just get super strong just like that. That's what they're doing with Terrence. Cause he gonna deal with beasts in the welterweight division. He gotta get stronger. So anyway, some appetizing fights we would love to see. Gary Russell versus Leo Santa Cruz. It hasn't happened. It hasn't happened. So people are disappointed about that. Tank versus Terran Farmer. They go mentioning it. They build up all this hype, and then they don't face each other. So fans get disappointed. I feel like sometimes the boxing promoters and the boxing community, they play us. I feel like they tease us, appetize us with, this fight is going to happen, and then it doesn't happen. I just think that the zone and Eddie Hearn's Matchroom is really giving us fights we may want to see. Like if they say, this is a fight. That's how it is in boxing, though. It builds up your appetite to face a certain boxer. You're all like, wow, your imagination starts to go wild. And then they don't give you the fight. So disappointed fans, they start using the ducking word. This fighter's ducking that fighter. That fighter's ducking this fighter. And so on. They start talking about ducking. When in fact the fighters are not ducking anybody. They brought up certain things and then they just can't deliver. Tank was supposed to face Abner Morris. Sounded exciting. Alright, okay. Let me see that fight. Didn't happen. Jamal Charlo was supposed to rematch Tony Harrison. 2 times the fight is put off. J. Ruck Williams is supposed to rematch Jarrett Hurd. We're excited. Jarrett Hurd pulls out. Boxing. Disappointing? Absolutely. Another thing that disappoints fans is when fighters keep on saying, I'm going to knock you out. I'm going to knock you out. I'm going to knock. And they ain't knockout shit. Fight goes 12 rounds. And it's a tactical fight. People start losing confidence in what the fighters are saying. Errol Spence says to Sean Porter, let's run it back again. We're all excited. Any tweet. I would like to have Terrence Crawford and Manny Pacquiao instead of Mikey Garcia. Danny Garcia. Then he officially faces Danny Garcia. Messing with us. So I think that's what fight fans feel. Damn, you were 145 pounds and 6'1". Crazy. Yeah, you filled out. That's good, man. Now I'm going to ask you this. Even though you're muscular at 6'1", are you strong? Now, guys who are very small, thin, lean, but incredibly strong. Muscle mass doesn't always equal strength. It's not what you can bench press, because the range of motion in your muscles goes different places. So, physical strength is a very important thing. And physical strength also goes beyond being strong for a couple of rounds. It means you have to have cardio as well. You have to be strong for a very long period of time. Cardio as well. You have to be strong for a very long period of time. If you can double the amount of rounds that naturally happens in a fight, so if it's a 12 rounder, you go 24 rounds, and your strength and endurance it stays, it's good. I started hitting the gym like crazy. It wasn't quick. It took me about 2 to 3 years. Yep. So you could be a cruiserweight. You could fight a cruiserweight or light heavyweight. So you're probably either a light heavyweight or cruiserweight if you decide to fight. You're not a heavyweight. But you could fight at heavyweight if you want, but you're not heavyweight. Can you lose the weight? You think you can get down in weight to like a cruiserweight, like 190 or 175? If you can, then that's a good weight class to fight at, especially light heavy. It's a very exciting weight class. But if not, then I guess you have to stay at heavyweight. Me, I'm not as big as you. I'm 5'10". I walk around 175. Well, right now, I'm 160. 160, 158, 159. And you can see I really feed my face, but it's the stuff that I eat that allows me to get away with it. I don't use a lot of sugars and a lot of fats. My sugars come from fruits. My fats come from seeds. I don't use oils. Like I might use chips and dip and that kind of stuff, but I don't use oils. I don't cook with oil. I use a lot of things like saffron and stuff like that. So my bowels always stay more or less free. And you know, a lot of your body mass comes from undigested food in your gut. So, I'm physically pretty strong, really pretty strong. I mean, I'm pretty strong, but I don't look it. I look small, but I'm physically strong. If you were to hit me, for example, on my body, you realize how hard I am. Very, very hard. There's no softness to me. So, in boxing, you gotta have it. I'm working on getting down to 154, but I had some digestive problems when I tried to get down that low. And so, a little worried about it, but I'll try again. And the other thing is that when you do your cardio, make sure you can last long. Because physical strength involves endurance as well. If you have tremendous muscle mass, You saw what happened with Anthony Joshua. You have to have lean muscle. Lean muscle. You're strong, you're fit, but you're lean. Because that lean muscle and fast twitch muscle is necessary for endurance. If your muscle is too big, it restricts range of motion as well as it weighs you down. Right? That's why Deontay Wilder is very effective as a heavyweight, because he doesn't really have heavy set muscle. He has lean muscle. And he's beast strong. He's stronger than most of the heavyweights out there. He took a punch and he just kept going. Very, very strong. Of course, you have to be mentally strong too, but check out Coach Eric Biley, Master Boxing. They literally train people in boxing. You can see some free tips so you can enter that program. That's what I'm going to be using. I do a lot of core body work, a lot of ab work. I use a lot of seasonings and herbs and shit like that. So all this food that goes into me, most of it comes back out. It doesn't even stay stuck in my gut. So I use a lot of selenium. I use saw palmetto, prostate, and I use also a multivitamin and an immune booster. So I haven't had the virus or the cold, or I haven't had the cold, the flu, months now. I can't remember the last time I had a flu. You guys should check out the Joker movie. I'll be doing that. I also want to look at I think it's Gemini with Will Smith. That looks like a good movie. So Clarissa Shields, for example, she had some big fights with Hannah Gabriels. That was a good fight. Hannah Gabriels going up in weight to 160 to fight for the 2 vacant titles against Clarissa Shields was great stuff. I thought Hannah won that, even though Hannah had never moved up in weight her entire career. It's incredible. Clarissa was the stronger boxer, though. She was physically stronger than Hannah. Hannah still held her own, though. So the thing about it is, like I said, Floyd never really faced true welterweights. He faced like 2 out of his whole entire welterweight career. Henry Armstrong, same thing. Sugar Ray Robinson. Well, he was fighting at middleweight even when he was at welterweight. So he was fighting those bigger guys, so he built up strength for those guys. Terrence Crawford, the same thing. It's going to take him 2 to 3 years to really grow into that welterweight that he needs to be to face these welterweights. That's why I keep on telling people, he's not just going to go in there and face Errol Spence next. That's Barbara Arum is making you feel. He's too small. He's not strong enough to face an Errol Spence. Errol Spence is a physically imposing, strong presence. And the only guy to really manhandle Errol Spence has been Sean Porter, because Sean Porter is also incredibly big and incredibly physically strong. Terrence Crawford's not that strong. He can't keep off Sean Porter. So, like, for instance, if we have a Sean Porter versus Terrence Crawford, Sean Porter will literally maul Terrence Crawford. He will maul him up. He will bully him. because you don't. If a guy's an exceptionally good boxer, what do? You brawl the boxer, and that's exactly what Sean Porter's style is. He can brawl you, and he's going to get past Terrence Crawford's jab. Terrence Crawford will try and head control him, but he will not be strong enough to head control him. He will not be strong. Sean fights through everything. He's physically an imposing presence, and so that would be too much for Terrence. I'm telling you. You see, you have to understand. Floyd didn't even face Sean Porter, and there's a reason. Marcus Maidana showed you. The only way you can negate the skill set of a boxer is you have to impose yourself on him and be a little bit dirty at the same time. And that's Sean. Sean can do all of that. So, and he's skilled enough to get to the inside bobbing and weaving and all of that for Terrence. I could see Terrence using the extended guard, trying to sort of stiff arm Sean, but Sean just go around it and just get to his body anyway and rough him up. So, I mean, you just have to think about what I'm saying and see the scenario play out. Terrence is not ready for those welterweights. I've been saying it over and over again. Everybody's been praising him and praising him and praising him. He's not ready for those guys yet. That's why he needs to face a guy like Danny Garcia, who's around his weight. You know, Mikey Garcia's a little bit smaller than him, but, you know, Mikey Garcia, Danny Garcia, Sergey Lipinets. Sergey Lipinets just came up from, you know, super lightweight. Those kinds of guys who came up from the lower weight classes. His contemporary sort of like, and people around his weight class. He's not a full-fledged welterweight. He's just not. He's growing into it. So that's what people don't understand. Yeah, he's getting KOs against guys who are not top-tier guys. Amir Khan has faded so much. And he has always been had a suspect shit. And even then, Terrence Crawford couldn't get him out of there. He was breaking him down to get him out of there, but it took the 7th round to even try and get him out of there. So all of this just to say that Terrence is not a full-fledged welterweight. He comes in maybe 154, 157, 159 on fight night, but he ain't them guys. He has not been hit by one of those guys. Even Sean Porter would probably hurt him bad. You look at Paulie Malignaggi versus Sean Porter, Adrian Broner versus Sean Porter, Danny Garcia versus Sean Porter. These are smaller guys versus Sean. He roughed those guys up. Ugas, on the other hand, is a full-fledged welterweight. You know, Ugas even, if Ugas is not so conservative and walks down Terrence, just really just starts to bully him and walk him down, he could get him up. He could really hurt him bad. Terrence is a great fighter, but he hasn't faced this kind of level of competition. These guys are like titans compared to the opposition he has faced. They're like legends, titans. The division in the welterweight division is more stacked than the Four Kings time. So, I mean, you know, Terrence is now trying to get into that mix, but I mean, he better get some kind of tune-up with one of these bad boys. Try and pick one of the least dangerous ones. You know, even Pacquiao's dangerous for Terrence. The Pacquiao against Keith Thurman, he dangerous for Terrence. Because of the speed, the quickness at which he moves. So, I mean, that's the division we're talking about. Now, the thing about it, what I'm trying to get you guys to understand is there are other matchups you can see. Danny Garcia versus, Danny Garcia versus Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao versus Errol Spence. Manny Pacquiao versus Sean Porter, which I think is a hell of a fight, and I think Sean Porter wins that one. Sean Porter versus Terrence Crawford. You know, Danny Garcia versus Terrence Crawford. That would be a hell of a fight. That's the fight. You know, of all the fights that I think are competitive for Terrence Crawford and a fight that I really want to see, it's Danny Garcia versus Terrence Crawford. I don't really care to see Errol Spence versus Terrence Crawford right now because Errol Spence is too big. Sean Porter's too big for him. Keith Thurman's too big for him. But Danny Garcia versus Terrence Crawford is a hell of a fight. That's a hell of a fight. That's a fight you would really want to see. That's the fight that we should be seeing. And, you know, it's interesting hearing Sean Porter talk about that. That, you know, Danny Garcia should face Terrence Crawford. That's the guy that should face Terrence Crawford right now. And Terrence Crawford has been trying to get Danny Garcia, we've heard. I don't know if Bob Arum was trying to get it for him, but he really wanted that Danny Garcia fight. That's the fight. Instead of we're gonna have an Errol Spence versus Danny Garcia fight. So you see, this is the kind of thing that in boxing kind of gets the fans down. The fights that a fan might be itching, like me, itching to see Danny Garcia versus Terrence Crawford. That's a hell of a fight. That's definitely gonna be a competitive fight. That's gonna be a good fight. These two guys coming up from lower. You don't get to see those fights until much later on when Danny Garcia probably got beaten up a lot or whatever. And it's that kind of disappointment that people have with boxing, the fight fans. And they talk about this fighter's ducking that fighter and this fighter's ducking that fighter. You know what I mean? We may get Jose Benavidez versus Caleb Plant. You know, that's something everybody wanted to see. Maybe we'll get it next. Maybe. Some fights we do get. You know? So, it is what it is. But at the end of the day, this is what frustrates fans. This is why fans badmouth fighters and put a bad name on fighters' careers, and fighters get a dampened thing. It's because the fans expect certain fights and then they don't happen. And it's usually the fighters or the promotional team that introduces these fights to us and makes our imagination go crazy, and then we look and we don't see their fights happen. We're going to have another really great fight in Bivol versus, not Bivol, sorry, Beterbiev versus Gavordi. That's going to be a hell of a fight, right? That's a hell of a fight. That's a fight all fans are looking forward to. Hopefully the fight comes through and we see them actually face each other. It's a good-ass fight, right? Derevyanchenko versus Gennady Golovkin's a good fight, but that's not the fight fans wanted to see. Fans wanted to see either Gennady Golovkin versus Jamal Charlo or against Demetrius Andrade. Similarly, I wanted to see Canelo versus Demetrius Andrade. I didn't want to see Canelo versus Sergey Kovalev. I told you guys I thought that was a shit fight. Well, here we are. We're getting the fight. A lot of people are trying to boost it up and hype it up, but it's still a shit fight to me. But it is what it is. It's boxing. Don't forget to smash that like button, people. Anyway, I've been talking enough boxing with you guys for the longest while. It's time for me to get out of here, but I gotta understand and empathize with fans who sometimes feel disappointed with matchups of fights. And we talk some fights that didn't happen and haven't happened yet. We're talking about Gervonta Davis versus Vasily Lomachenko. Gervonta Davis versus Tevin Farmer. You guys mentioned some other fights while I'm mentioning mine. We got, Deontay Wilder versus Anthony Joshua. And middleweight, I already mentioned Canelo versus Demetrius Andrade and Jamal Charlo, Billy Joe Saunders. We have Gennady Golovkin, the same thing with those guys. Danny Jacobs versus Jamal Charlo. Danny Jacobs versus Demetrius Andrade. Danny Jacobs versus Billy Joe Saunders. We haven't had those fights. Chris Eubank Jr. versus Danny Jacobs. Chris Eubank Jr. versus Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. I mean, these are all fights. I think Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. may be facing Danny Jacobs. Alfredo Angulo faced Peter Quillin. That was a good fight. Angulo won. You know, these are the kinds of fights we're talking about. Callum Smith versus, David Benavidez. You know what I mean? Of course, with Terrence Crawford versus Errol Spence, that everybody wants to see. Excuse me for a minute. We're getting the fights at 140 though. We're getting Josh Taylor versus Reggie Sprograve, which is a great fight. That's a great matchup. We have Maurice Hooker versus Jose Ramirez. That was a great matchup as well. So again, in the zone. Of course, looking forward to Nonito Donaire versus Naoya Inoue. And then we got a bunch of other fights. Just heard that Chocolatito will be coming back to boxing very soon. He got an injury. Of course, I would love to see a rematch between Juan Francisco Estrada and Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez. I would love to see that. You got all these. You got fights like Dillian White versus Joseph Parker versus Derek Chisora was supposed to happen, and that's canceled now, right? We may have Michael Hunter versus Derek Chisora. It's a good fight as well. Alexander Usyk, we were expecting him to face maybe a Dillian White or a Derek Chisora. Instead, he's facing some unknown guy. I don't know who the fuck he is. And it's just this kind of thing that sometimes happens where I know you have to introduce new fighters to boxing and stuff, but sometimes it's so disappointing when you don't see names face names. Good fighters face good fighters. I think that's the protest that most fans have. For me, I just let it slide. I just go with the flow. But at the end of the day, I understand where the fans are coming from, and there's disappointment in certain things and why they say certain fighters are ducking certain fighters. Take for instance, right now in the and there's a certain degree where fighters are running away from other fighters because they don't want to lose their O, or other times the promotional company and the matchmakers are just bringing up the fighter slowly, But to me, it gets ridiculous when I don't see Leo Santa Cruz facing anybody in a while. When Gary Russell Jr. is not facing anybody in a while. These are two of the most notorious names that ain't faced really great competition. And we expected so much from them. And, on the other hand, we got guys like Adrian Broner taking on everybody. He not winning everything, but at least he's got names on his resume. When you look at Adrian Broner's resume, it's pretty impressive, you know. And I'm just saying that a lot of people don't like Adrian Broner though in boxing, so it is what it is. But I think that a lot of times fans are discouraged because of the fights they're not getting, but they forget about the fights they're getting, and good fights at that. So you have to kind of balance it off, have an open mind to it. Of course, sometimes you're going to have some fighters face no-name fighters, stay busy fights, that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, you want to have fights which um, are good fights. And hopefully between two known boxers or star boxers. That's what you really want at the end of the day. We had J-Rock versus Jarrett Hurd. We had Tony Harrison versus Jamel Charlo. We had Canelo versus Danny Jacobs this year. We're going to have Canelo versus Kovalev at the end of the year. We had the upset with Andy Ruiz and Anthony Joshua. We had Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury. Was that last year? I think it was last year. So we had Deontay Wilder versus Dominic Brazil, which was a shit fight. And he's going to have a second shit fight in terms of him versus Luis Ortiz, which I'm not really interested in. So he's got a shit fight year for Deontay Wilder. Hopefully it's Tyson Fury match, and then he probably faces the winner of Ruiz and Anthony Joshua, which will be good. Hopefully. I don't know. But when you look at boxing, and you look at the fights that you may want to see, you guys probably want to see a couple fights. I would love to see, for instance, at super welterweight, Jaime Munguia versus one of those guys at super welterweight, whether it be Tony Harrison or it be J. Rock Williams. Preferably J. Rock Williams because he's I think, the tougher competition. But hey, at the end of the day, Jaime Munguia ain't facing those guys for stupid reasons with Golden Boy and maybe the PBC fighters. I don't know what's going on, but that's what's up with that. And then when you look at the lightweight division with Vasily Lomachenko, well, Lomachenko hopefully will face the winner of Teofimo Lopez and Richard Comey, and then after that he would face one of his mandatories, whether it be Gervonta Davis if he's still there, Devin Haney if he's still there, the WBC and WBA and WBC mandatories respectively. So that's something we would like to look forward to at super featherweight. Barrett-Chelty's facing some other person. I don't know who it is, but there's Barrett-Chelty there. There's the IBF kid there, which is Tevin Farmer. The WBC, is it WBC? No, the WBA title is now vacant. Gervonta Davis has left that, and some people are going to fight for the WBA title. Who is that? I don't know. So all I'm saying is, and of course the featherweight division. All I'm saying is these fighters need to face each other, whether it's unifications or whatever. They need to face each other, and that's the thing we're looking forward to. And not try to get it as hot as possible when the fans really want it. The fans could want it later on too, but it's not good to let fights marinate. Sometimes fighters lose, and the luster of the fight is worn away. Anyway, I'm feeling a little sleepy, but I'm gonna get out of here. You guys have a good one today. God bless. Peace.